It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. I'm Geoff Arbuckle, and this is Monster Mondays presented to you by Film Seizure. You can catch new episodes of Film Seizure with myself and Jason Oliver on Wednesdays, but Mondays are for me to talk about monster movies. Now, I've quietly said that I've got a bit of a moratorium of sorts on Godzilla movies. Frankly, I did the Americanized original film early on in this series, but I then did 5 consecutive movies to celebrate the release of this year's Godzilla King of the Monsters. While, yes, there is a deep well of Godzilla flicks to fuel this series for, well, forever, I wanted to talk about other monsters too. All that said, I didn't say I wouldn't cover any Japanese monsters until I brought Big G back from his hibernation. So, shortly after Godzilla's first movie and a sequel, Toho went back to the monster well for this week's Monster Mondays feature, Rodan. While Godzilla and Anguirus would appear first, Rodan and creatures that would later make another appearance in the Millennium series film Godzilla vs. Megaguirus would ultimately predate Mothra and King Ghidorah, who were co-stars with Godzilla and Rodan in this year's King of the Monsters. In fact, in the earlier days of Toho's monster flicks, they produced a lot of movies with creatures before they ever had anything to do with Godzilla's world. Rodan and Mothra were standalone characters, as was Varan and Mothra, but they didn't get a great deal of play with Godzilla movies outside of a cameo here or an appearance several decades later. Rodan was directed by Ishiro Honda, and he's basically the father of the Japanese kaiju films. He was instrumental in the direction of several of the Toho monster films, which likely made it very easy for him to bring all his monsters together for various films where there's a little more of an all-out war between the creatures. His films often had lots to say, too, and weren't merely children's films. At least until the 1960s. Granted, some real hard left turns made in that decade with his monster movies, and I'm not really going to harp on that. Besides, I like those movies a lot because I first saw them as a kid, and those were heavily starting to gear more towards children. But I'll stick to the Rodan movie here, which I think is maybe often overlooked in Honda's string of successful monsters. Rodan appeared in a whole bunch of Godzilla movies. Most of the time, he was maybe more of a rival or possibly begrudgingly on the same side against a bigger threat, say a Ghidorah or something like that. My point is that outside of Ghidorah and Mothra, no other monster appeared more often than Rodan. Ghidorah and Mothra lead the pack with 8 appearances each, and Rodan has appeared in 7 Godzilla movies. Add his solo movie and a cameo in some other movie a few years before appearing alongside Godzilla for the first time, and he's been in more movies than King Ghidorah himself. Mechagodzilla is technically tied with Rodan at 7, but is he really a monster or just a technological achievement? Plus, 2 of those appearances he wasn't built by humans or even from Earth for that matter. I love you, original Mecha G, but I don't think you fairly get to be tied with Rodan for second. As an aside, because some of my friends have been a little disappointed in my opinions of this year's Godzilla King of the Monsters, I didn't hate it. It just really honestly couldn't live up to my hopes and expectations. There are things I very much liked. I still pre-ordered the DVD. I'm still cool with the movie in general, and I appreciate that there are people who do like that movie. But I'm just going to speed past those human bits when I watch it again and just get to the monsters fights. And a couple of things I will add as addendums to my previous Monster Monday review of it. I love, love, love how Mothra has now been promoted to the title Queen of the Monsters. There's an adorable series of fan art out there that has pretty much shown Mothra and Godzilla in their interspecies romance. The movie treated that with such reverence and a great deal of cuteness that I appreciate it so much just based on the dystopia that was basically left thanks to Ghidorah in the movie. That said, I was disappointed that Rodan was basically demoted to the role of Ghidorah's bitch first, then Godzilla's little bitch second. Just because he lost the fight against Ghidorah early on, he's just some bent kneed bitch servant now. And yeah, that might be somewhat realistic in nature to follow an alpha, but frankly, I'm looking over the numbers again, and yeah, Rodan is an alpha in the world of Godzilla. I'm just saying. I don't think Rodan is some doofus cuck beta monster, but I digress. So the movie begins with a quick lesson on how super powerful atomic weaponry is. Oh, and I should mention that I am watching the Americanized version of this movie. I will say that I commend the American dub talking about how much longer should we be dropping nukes before the Earth says, yeah, we're done here, and begins unleashing monsters on us. I almost feel like this version is somewhat self-aware as to why Godzilla is such a huge icon in Japan, particularly in his first appearance. Next, we meet some miners who have been affected by some sort of tension that seems to be in the air. It seems like a lot of people are just kind of feeling uh, a little bit of dread. And they are practically at each other's throats already when one of the miners has been found slaughtered. And he's not dead from natural causes or by an accident, he's been cut up pretty badly. A friend of our main character, Shigeru, is implicated in the killing due to some fisticuffs that broke out earlier in the day. Now, more deaths begin to occur, but no one knows what is causing it. The victims are slashed up something terrible, so there's either a madman loose or, well, it is Japan, so probably a giant monster of some sort. And yeah, I'm putting my money on giant monster. Sure enough, as Shigeru and his lover Kiyo embrace and he calms her fears over the killings, bam! A giant worm like thing comes busting into their home. This is a Mega Nulon. He would later be seen again in Godzilla lore as this is basically the larvae of a dragonfly creature called Megagyrus. The local police chase the creature, but it seems pretty tough to kill. The locals chase the Meganulon into the mine and kill it by crushing it with a mine car. However, womp womp, there's another one. Ultimately, the mine collapses and Shigeru gets trapped inside, but he is able to eventually claw his way out. Man, if that wasn't enough, it turns out that Mount Aso is on the verge of erupting as well. On top of that, an Air Force pilot in the Japanese Self Defense Force reports seeing a giant flying object making maneuvers that are, frankly, quite impossible at the incredible speeds it's moving before his plane is attacked and the pilot is killed. When pictures taken by a newlywed couple near the volcano are studied, they find what appears to be a giant winged creature captured in one of the photos. They figure out that the creature creating havoc with the Air Force planes from several countries and that killed that newlywed couple is something like a pteranodon. However, it's ultimately determined that it's something slightly more modern. A biology professor by the name of Kashiwagi dubs the creature Rodan. Kashiwagi theorizes that nuclear bomb testing has awoken the creature. And as it turns out, it's not alone. There is also a second Rodan creature that is starting to fly around. The Japanese Self-Defense Force decide to lead the Rodan to Mount Aso, where they will be attracted to the volcanic heat, and here they can fire missiles at the mountain base as they are there. When they do, they ultimately bury the Rodans, causing them to succumb to the fumes and the lava and bits of mountain and what have you. So let's get to my three things, shall we? If this is your first episode of Monster Mondays, I always, no matter how much I personally like or dislike a monster movie, no matter the quality of the film itself, I always find three things I like about a movie. First up, unlike many of the Toho creature movies, I have to say I quite like the human story of this movie considerably. There are times in which the movie focuses heavily on couples. Shigeru and Kiyo are young lovers planning to marry. A young newlywed couple are killed by Rodan at Mount Aso, and naturally there are the two Rodans that seem to be basically planning to mate if they haven't already. Additionally, I quite like the misdirect of the Mega Nulons ultimately leading humans to a bigger, badder problem of the Rodans. Once you get to the bigger, badder problem, you have this really cool montage of various pilots trying to chase and attack the first Rodan, only for you to hear them die one after the other. It's quite effective. Next, once Rodan gets out and about, boy oh boy is he destructive. As he flies around, he pulls one over on the Japanese pilots by diving into the water, causing them to follow, but then he busts out of the water and uses a maneuver to basically stay out ahead of the jets. He then lands on top of a building and starts flapping his wings and just blows everything over like he's a typhoon or something. He gets attacked by the JSDF with tanks and rocket launchers and such, and there's good miniature work here. There is one moment in which they make it seem like he has some fire or smoke breathing powers too, but it's never really seen again in any of his other appearances. Either way, there's great monster action here, and when Rodan flies over stuff, he brings with him a destructive wind that I always just love. In the latest King of the Monsters, it looks like that scene in Terminator 2 when Sarah Connor sees Judgment Day happen and everything is basically reduced to dust. And lastly, much like watching Godzilla die in the first of his movies, this movie ends somewhat sadly too. Basically, the two Rodans die together in almost a loving embrace, and while Rodan is destructive as all get out, he's only doing as Rodans do. Not to mention, we were the ones who woke him up with our nuclear shenanigans. But anyway, we have to watch these poor creatures die slowly with fucking lava as they were just trying to figure out what in the hell was going on that woke them up. On top of that, we are so lucky to watch Shigeru and Kyo, two young lovers themselves, watch these mates die. And as I said, with the first Godzilla movie, these movies had a way of humanizing the monsters. Yeah, they were technically the villains. Yeah, they were blowing up towns, but they were also seemingly sentient beings that were just doing what they do. It's sad enough we have to watch them die, but they play sad music and the voiceover saying that they refuse to live without one another and how human they seemed in their final moments. But you know what? Fuck that. At least he can make us all feel better by saying that man proved himself stronger. Eat lava, Rodan jerks. Hope those fumes and the lava and the gases don't kill you too fast. Ugh, people suck. Anyway, that wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. Until next week, I'll see you later, and don't forget to check out new episodes of Film Seizure every Wednesday and a new installment of Monster Mondays each Monday afternoon on filmseizure.com. Also, check out new posts on my website, bmovieenema.com, each and every Friday.
Her name was Rodan, and she lived in the ocean off Japan.